Welcome to the Creature Crossing Podcast.
The real episode 1 of the Creature Crossing Podcast. My name is Braden, and I am joined by my awesome co-host Brennick. And today, our topic of discussion is garter snakes. So, I work very closely with garter snakes, which is why I picked it for today's topic. Brennick, do you have garter snake experience in any way, even not keeping them?
Yeah, when I was a little boy, just like most of us reptile keepers, used to catch garter
Me
snakes
too.
in my backyard. So I'd have buckets full all the time. And in captivity, I've only kept one. And, my mindset growing up was like, why pay money for something I could find in my backyard? But after I had the experience with my eastern melanistic, I'm like, everybody needs a garter snake. These are the most fascinating animals ever.
Yeah. Oh, I agree for sure. They're super cool. I mean, I know you're not telling me, but you don't have to tell me how awesome these guys are because I don't have a lot of them anymore. I'm going to, but I had a decent collection of them. Not too shabby. So we're going to talk about garter snakes today, and what is going to differ this episode from maybe some of the other ones that are out there is I want to dive into a little bit more of the natural history, the evolution of them. I've listened to probably all of the garter snake podcasts out there, and I've loved every single one of them. Brennick, we were just talking about how you listened to one earlier in the week. Nobody talks about, and this can be said for any reptile podcast ever. No, like hardly any episodes go into the evolution and the natural history of the genuses we're talking about. So I want to talk a little bit about that before we get into the captive husbandry. I think it's important. I think it's interesting because these snakes are not only underrepresented in the captive hobby. I mean, they're less than, I think, 1% of snakes on Morph Market, for example. But they're also an incredible evolutionary success story because these snakes are in North America. North American garter snakes is what we're talking about, not African garter snakes. To be very clear, it's very different. North American garter snakes are everywhere in North America and Central America. And they've been like that for a while. So to get started, like I said, we'll talk about that, and then we'll move into them in captivity. So I do have some notes here. I did a bunch of research over the last week or two. Some of it was I had some papers printed out, and there's a book. Actually, before I get started, I'll recommend a book quick right here. It's a little older. It's a little outdated, but The Garter Snakes, Evolution and Ecology. If you're a garter snake nut, this is like your Bible. You got to get that book. It's not cheap anymore because it's been out of print for God knows how long, but it's worth finding a copy for sure.
Who is the author of that book?
I think there's a few. The author of that book is Douglas A. Rossman, Neil B. Ford, and Richard A. Segal. I don't know how to pronounce that, but that book rocks. It's a little outdated. But I'm pretty sure it's from the 80s, so I'm not surprised there. So let's talk about garter snakes. You got anything before I get started, Brennick?
No, jump in, please. I'm ready.
Perfect. Hold on here. So the garter snakes that we're talking about today refers to the North American populations and species of North American garter snakes. So those are under the genus Thamnophis. From what I can tell, their Latin name, Thamno or Tham, is garter, and Ophis is snake. Or sorry, Tham is bush. So bush snake, not garter. Garter is the common name, and the common name there, where they get the name garter, is supposedly from their stripes, the stripes of the animals, which they don't all have. Looks like old timey garters. Hold your socks up. Brennick probably still wears them because he's old. But
I do. Yes.
Those, I've heard people say there's no way that's why they're named that before. However, I'm not sure. Sometime in the 1800s, when Thamnophis sertalis was described, sertalis also means garter, which is where I got confused a little earlier with tham. Tham is bush. So let's just go with that's why. Many people know them by garden snakes, gardener snakes. It's not what they're called. If you call them that, I don't think you should be lynched either, but they are called garter snakes. As I said before, they're part of the subfamily Natricinae, so they're natricines. So other snakes in North America like that would be your water snakes, your Nerodia, your DK's brown snakes, your Steraria, and even your crayfish snakes, Regina, a couple others in there for North America. And then they're also related, not as closely related, to European viperine and grass snakes and European water snakes, viperine water snakes. So that would be your natrix. So those snakes, as well as many others, many others, are all in the subfamily Natricinae. Okay. Are we following so far? Perfect.
Yes, sir.
Fantastic. So garter snakes are incredibly diverse in North America. They range from, there's been reports of them in Alaska all the way down to Central America, Costa Rica. Okay. So it's one of the widest ranges of snakes on the planet for sure. For species, right now, I believe there's around 37 or 38 species recognized right now. There's one, I can't remember the genus, but it keeps getting added and removed. And then there's like 80 plus subspecies. There's a lot of them. And these range from species that a lot of us in North America have seen: eastern garter snakes, Thamnophis sertalis sertalis. There's a lot of Mexican species, the X, EQUES, Thamnophis X species, the Mexican garter snakes, your like chapalas, your like cutsios. Those are all in Mexico. There is a ton of them. They are found in the pet trade, a lot of wild caughts, and there is some captive bred and born coming up now these days. And for the most part, these are snakes that make awesome pets. And we'll talk a lot more about that later. So I'll tell you quick, Brennick, do you have any idea how small in inches the smallest garter snakes get? Any guesses? What do you think?
The smallest in inches?
Yeah, in inches.
Are we talking like at birth? Or just
adult
max?
sizes.
Adult sizes? Say maybe 12 inches for
you're pretty much right on the dot. So
Nice.
Thamnophis brachystoma, the short-head garter snake, is among the smallest. You're going to get anywhere from 10 to 20, sometimes a little bigger, 10 to 20 inches. And that's for males and females. Female garter snakes get larger than the males. Okay. This is because they're ovoviviparous. So the females are taking the babies full term internally. They have, it's a lot of work, right? So the females are bigger. They also have a ton of babies, so a bigger body plan is going to, for those larger species, help out with that as well. The largest garter snake, so you ready for this, Brennick?
Hit me.
The record, I'm not sure if it's a verified record, but I didn't find any sources saying that it wasn't, is 65 inches. So we're getting up into the 5-6 foot range. And that's Thamnophis gigas, which is the giant garter snake, and they're found in California. They're also endangered. There's not a lot of them left, but they get huge. 35 to 50 is probably a little more common. But records of, like I said, 65 inches aren't unheard of. So, could you imagine a 65-inch garter snake at home? Like,
That's the dream.
yeah, that would be sweet. I don't believe there's any in the private. I don't think I'm almost certain there's none in the private sector. I'm sure there's a couple in zoos and other institutions. But and 65-inch garter snake, holy! I mean, I'm happy when I find photos of a 40-inch. You know what I mean? Like,
100%.
and a 40-inch garter snake is big. That's not a small, for garter snakes. But I mean, you're a bow. You got bows and retics, so you're probably like, what are you talking about?
Well, I was gonna say I was talking to my wife after the last episode, and she's like, "You told everybody you don't keep big snakes anymore, and then you told them you have a 12-foot super dwarf retic." And I'm like, "Well, for me, like 12 feet is like on the brink of being big."
Yeah, it's like
So,
medium to big, right? That's where that
yeah,
transition starts to me too. I've always considered like 14 plus a big snake, but
yeah.
I also don't think 13 foot's a small snake. But
No, and there's also like body composition factors too, right? You could have some like really
that's a
long
good,
boys that are thin.
yeah. And then you can have a blood python. Blood python is a big snake. I don't care what anybody says, and they get like 6 feet. Like,
Yeah, they hefty.
that's big. Yeah, those are big. Those are big. But like I have a yellow anaconda. That's my biggest species I have, and I would consider that a medium species. I wouldn't consider it a large. They're large bodied, but I don't know. That's just a personal thing, I guess. But 40-inch garter snake, fuck yeah, I'll take as many of those as you can throw at me.
So you said 65 was the biggest for the Gigas, correct?
Yeah, that's the biggest, like, on record from what I can find.
Now, offspring wise, how many do you think they'd push out?
I would say for a species like that, it depends. Like, even with the more common species, like an eastern garter snake, you can have a litter of 14 and the babies are really big, or you can have a litter of 60 and the babies are tiny, right? Yeah. Probably anywhere between, like, a big range would be probably on average 15 to 30, but I wouldn't be surprised if they could have larger litters. I'm going to guess, I didn't do a whole bunch of research on what's restricting, like why they're critically endangered. I'm going to guess lack of habitat, habitat loss, and it could even have something to do with their reproduction. So maybe they have less babies and they're bigger. Who knows? But that's something I'll put in the show notes. I'll do a little research after, and then I'll put how many babies they have on average, if we even know. Because, like I said, I don't think there's a lot. I don't think they're very well understood species. But they're cool. And they're like the classic kind of black or brown with the yellow stripe. But the yellow is not the same as you're thinking with like an Eastern garter. But I love that look. I've always been a big fan of that look. So they're cool. So let's go through a little bit of evolutionary history. And I want to start by saying I am not a evolutionary biologist. I'm not a biologist. This is just based on my own research. From what I can find, the most up-to-date papers on it. Things are going to change, and I may even get things wrong. If I do, let me know, because this is a topic that I really do like learning about. And the more I can learn about it, the better, because it rocks. I think the evolution of these snakes is super cool. Hell yeah. So we're going to start pretty far away, back in the past, to about 35 to 45 million years ago. Which is when the subfamily Natricinae is believed to have originated in Asia. It could have even been longer before that, but that's the general consensus of when this subfamily is believed to have popped up. Not garter snakes, just the subfamily. So this would be your proto garter snakes, like way before garter snakes are even a twinkle in the snake's eye. Fast forward to a little bit closer to us, 27 million years ago. This is when the ancestors of Thamnophis, so again, much before garter snakes have actually evolved, they disperse from Asia along the Bering Land Bridge. Now, I had heard the Bering Land Bridge before because I listened to the Common Descent podcast, and they've talked about it in the past. But I wasn't familiar with exactly what it was, so I did a little research. The Bering Land Bridge was a land bridge created basically when glaciers were holding so much of the planet's water that global sea levels dropped enough to form a land bridge, which is the Bering Land Bridge. Caused a ton of species dispersal from west to east and east to west, probably, including the Natricinae snakes and even humans. It's believed to be what would have brought us to the New World at first as well, if I'm not mistaken. Now, garter snakes, I said before, and their relatives in North America are ovoviviparous. So they hold on to their babies internally, and then they give birth to basically a clear egg sac where the babies break out and they scurry off. I had a really hard time finding when this adaptation actually evolved. I don't think we know. The best guess that I could find from the information I gathered was between 27 and 16 million years ago. Because if you think about it this way, garter snakes, all species and subspecies, give live birth or are ovoviviparous. Neurodia, Steraria, Regina, all of those are also ovoviviparous. It's possible they could have evolved it separately. I think it's more likely that their common ancestor of all those species and genuses was probably also ovoviviparous, which is where I got that time frame from, because there was a lot of species dispersal going on at that time, leading up to. I mean, we're still not. Garter snakes don't even exist yet in our time frame, so they're not even there yet. Even still, are we following so far? Perfect. Love to hear it. Now, 20 to 10 million years ago, so we're inching up closer to us. Okay, the garter snake relatives spread across North America into Central America, Mexico. They diversify along the way, and this gives rise to a lot of modern clades within the tribe Thamnophini, which would include your Neurodia and your Steraria and Regina. And this happens along the entire Western Hemisphere, and we are still not at garter snakes. However, the keynote here is that these Thamnophini, ancestors of garter snakes, have made it to Mexico. That's super important, because between 15 to 12 million years ago, we get our first evidence of garter snakes, of Thamnophis, the genus, in Mexico. So right now, best estimates and studies and whatever, the belief is the genus originated in Mexico. Okay, so now we have garter snakes, finally. And my notes on this are basically almost done, because most of it is leading up to the fact that Thamnophis existed. So they're around in Mexico. 10 to 3 million years ago is a time of major radiation, meaning essentially garter snakes, they take over North America. They continue to diversify along North America and into Central America. They actually made it to Central America twice, and that's where we get our Central American ribbon snake. And there's also a checkered garter snake relative. There used to be two. There's now one that is in Central America. Okay, so from here, basically, they entirely took over. They took over North America, essentially, and they diversified over within the last 12,000 years is kind of believed to be where our modern Thamnophis is established. So our common garter snakes, Thamnophis sertalis, our ribbon snakes, our maybe some of the other ones are a little older. Thamnophis X being from Mexico, which is where I'm not sure exactly where that goes. But within those 83 subspecies, 37, whatever, 38 species, probably around the last 12,000 years. Okay, so they're quite a modern group of snakes. However, I think it's really interesting to note how fast they took over and how successful they are. Like, these snakes are everywhere. You can't find a place hardly in North America where there's not garter snakes in the wild. And part of their increased, well, I'll ask you, Brennick, do you have any random guesses as to what maybe could make it, like, why are these snakes doing so well and at the numbers they are and at the number of species and the diversification that they are, whereas maybe, like, I don't see rubber boas all over the place, I don't see hognoses all over the place, right? They're around, but like, why garter snakes?
My guess would be diet. Their diet is like so vast they could eat pretty much anything.
Yeah.
And then I just think them as a species, like, they can handle such a variable of temperatures. Because as you said, like, they range from Mexico to all over North America. So
Yeah.
very hot to not so hot, like we're
Oh, yeah.
experiencing now.
Like where I'm at.
Yeah.
I have garter snakes where I am, and there's polar bears here too. Like,
Yep.
it's insane.
And
So-
sometimes they fist fight for a Coke, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Is what it
And
is.
then I get involved because I'm like, oh, there's a fucking garter snake right there. Move over, polar bear. But
That's right.
I mean, the good news is I wasn't trying to give you a trick question, because realistically, like, I'm sure there's many reasons. But diet was definitely one of the ones that was way up high on my list. These snakes are super opportunistic. Their diet is so varied. I can't sit here and list you all the things they eat. Like, if it's an animal, they probably eat it. Even some species are known to eat caterpillars. So like, and probably insects. Not a lot of the species we have in captivity do very well on insects. Maybe caterpillars. I haven't experimented with that yet. But these snakes eat everything. Garter snakes eat rodents. They eat worms. They eat fish. They eat amphibians, and that's not just frogs and toads. They'll eat salamanders. They eat, like I said, rodents already. They eat rodents.
Worms?
They'll eat birds. Like, yeah, worms. They eat everything. There's, like, I am no longer surprised when I see garter snake predation on something weird. I have zero doubt that they eat it all. I guarantee you they've eaten crayfish. There was actually a picture that went around recently on one of the Facebook groups of one eating just a bird. Like, it caught a bird and was eating it. That, like, they'll eat anything. They really will. And I think that has a lot to do with their success. I also think, like you said, like, they're adaptable as hell. These are snakes that are capable of withstanding 6-7 months of winter. These are snakes that are capable of surviving droughts. They're capable of surviving floods. Like, they've done very well in most of their range. There's exceptions for sure, and I'm sure we'll talk about some of them. But these snakes are successful, and which is great for me because I love them. Now, the first time I actually saw a garter snake was I was about 4 years old, and we were at my uncle's house. My dad and I were. I think we were moving wood or something. Like, I was so young. It's only one part of this memory is vivid, and it's the snake. But I remember my dad pointing at this big pile of firewood, and he said, "There's a snake in there." And I was like, "What?" Like, in my mind, snakes were, they were in zoos. We didn't have snakes in Canada or whatever, or at least not where I lived. I didn't know. We move away some of the lumber, and behold, there's like this huge, in my mind, I don't even know how big it was, a huge eastern garter snake. And basically from that point on, I was obsessed with these snakes. Doesn't matter how many zoos I work at, doesn't matter how many species I work with or species I get to hang out with friends' houses or see, garter snakes are my number one. And I think it'll always stay that way. Although I have ventured off into the water snakes and the European grass snakes, which, one thing I want to note quick. European grass snakes, which are a close relative, lay eggs, which is one of the reasons why I put the live birth and the year time frame that I did had to have happened after that. I think. So I think it probably happened after they passed the Beringia land bridge and started diversifying across North America. Their relatives.
Do you want to speculate on why they lay eggs? Is it just based off of
why they lay eggs, or why they
predation?
now give live birth?
Why that was the grass snakes, right?
Yeah,
That
grass
lay
snakes
eggs?
too.
Yeah. So
Well,
is it like predation?
so the ancestral form for snakes is eggs. So I believe, and like I said, I'm not an expert. This is, like you just said, this is speculation. I don't think European grass snakes re-evolved laying eggs. I don't think they ever evolved live birth. But their common ancestor that they would have shared around, I think it's around 33, 35 million years ago with garter snakes, when they would have passed that land bridge, at some point there between whatever I said, they would have evolved it. And that, my speculation, is probably something to do with temperature, colder weather.
Okay.
Snakes, there seems to be a relation with live bearing snakes of some species and live birth. I can't say for sure. Obviously, there's also plenty of hot temperatured snakes that give live birth. Your boa constrictors are a perfect example. They're a tropical species that give live birth. But there seems to be some sort of connection as well between cold weather snakes and live birth. Now, I do know through my research that live birth in snakes has evolved a shit ton of times. Like maybe even multiple times within Natrocinae, not just the one. So I can't say for sure why European grass snakes have never evolved it. I guess they just never, it's not been necessary for them. And which is weird too, because they're not all warm temperatured species. Like they're in Europe too, right? Like some of the cooler parts of Europe. They're also go down to Africa and stuff. So there are warmer species. I don't know. It's a weird thing, but one thing I'll say is, since I've owned Natrix before, and I now own Natrix again, I own a different species now. I used to own Natrix tessellata, and now I own Natrix mora. And it is actually really interesting, despite there being 30 plus million years of separation, to see how similar they are to each other. Even though they're like the core bases of their biology are different, like they don't even reproduce the same way. They're still like, they look like each other. And I think this quote unquote basal look to them, I think probably also has a lot to do with their success. They haven't needed to do they have done a lot of changing, but their body plan is very similar. There's a couple weird ones out there, but they do overall look pretty similar. And you'll have species that look like I think it's Thamnophis rufipunctatus. I can't remember maybe that's the narrow-headed garter snake. It looks like Natrix tessellata to me. Like they're very similar looking snakes, but they're separated by a shit ton of years, like a long time. They're not related. They are related, but they're not closely related. Aside from the fact that they're both in the subfamily Natrocinae. But I'll put a picture of one of those up if I can. But if I can't, look up Thamnophis rufipunctatus. It is a weird looking snake. It's super cool. Probably one of my favorites. So yeah, that's basically our really simple life history of the garter snakes. Like beyond simple. Like as simple as I can make it, basically. I'm not an expert on that topic. I would love to be. I'm still learning about it. But and they're super cool. So now, I mean, let's just talk garter snakes. Let's talk garter snakes in captivity. So Brennick, if I can switch it to you for a little bit, because I'm blabbing so much. And again, I don't mean to put you on the spot. So if I do, just tell me to fuck off. But you are getting into garter snakes.
Okay? Yes.
You want to get into them. You are interested in knowing about how to keep them alive and perhaps reproduce them within captivity. What kind of questions would you ask me.
Well, I think a really important thing, like uh, if I was breeding garter snakes, a good sales pitch would be, your parents don't like snakes because they don't want you to feed rodents. Well,
Yeah,
I got the perfect snake for you.
yeah, that is a super good example. The benefit of that diverse diet is it's diverse in captivity as well.
Yep.
I used to, when I was really big into garter snakes, I did feed a lot of rodents,
Mhm.
and I never had any negative. Like when I fed rodents, I just fed a lot less than I would if I was feeding. I always fed a variety, but when rodents were the primary part of the diets, this my second coming into the hobby, which has only been around a year or so, my diet has changed significantly to include a lot more fish and a lot more amphibian-based products, um, which is like what you were alluding to. You can get a garter snake and keep it on safe fish. And I'll explain what I mean by safe in a minute there. But you can get Sally's Silver Sides, a Hikari brand, San Francisco, or sorry, not Hikari. I think it's San Francisco Bay brand Sally's Silver Sides, and feed them with frog legs and chicken hearts and all this other crap, which is basically what I'm doing now. And you can keep a garter snake, like you said, without feeding rodents, which is pretty cool. I think at this point, my garter snakes maybe get a rodent once a month, maybe twice. They maybe get a bird every 2 to 3 months. Now that I'm breeding quail, and I'll even give eggs. Not a lot of people feed the garter snakes eggs, but I've experimented a lot with eggs, and they seem to love them.
How do they
So
do that? Do they just like put it in their mouth, break the shell, and
so for them specifically, I haven't tried giving it with the shell.
oh,
I
okay.
have with the corn snakes, and they just swallow it. They don't even spit up the eggshell. They just
Oh no way.
they just digest it all. But with the garter snakes, what I do is similar to what people have done with hognose snakes, where I'll just boil the eggs. I boil little quail eggs, and they'll eat them. Sometimes I give it with the yolk. Sometimes I give it without. But I haven't given them that in a while. But they go nuts for it. It's fun. Something different, right?
hmm Now, another question for you. As a beginner, just getting into garter snakes, what would you recommend housing them in?
My bare minimum. Well, it depends too, because if you're getting a male, males stay super skinny, super small. Like a big male is going to be 18, 20, 24 inches maximum, but even that's kind of pushing it, depending on species, obviously. Some of your Mexican species, like your Lake Chapala garter snakes, can get like 4 feet long, maybe even a little bigger, perhaps. So if I was to house a lone male garter snake, it's a pretty loaded question, because the answers are going to depend on a lot of factors. A lone male garter snake, I wouldn't go anything smaller than 20 gallons. I'm a big believer in bigger is better. A female, bump it up to 30 or 40. But these are intelligent, incredibly active snakes. A pair, I wouldn't go any smaller than 50 gallons. Like a 36 by 18 by 18 is what I'm building for my pairs right now. And even that, when I look at it, I go, fuck, I wish I did bigger. Like, so for a pair, I wouldn't personally go smaller than 40 gallons, but 50 was probably going to be your sweet spot for a minimum, in my opinion. Nobody's going to lynch you. I'm not even going to lynch you for going smaller than that. But these are active snakes. They're intelligent. They love to know what's going on. They want to know what's going on. When I'm in the room working, this is, like I said, this is my G spot, as what I've been calling my garter room, the G spot. It's, yeah, it's awesome, right?
Sorry, I'd never be able to find it.
Yeah, you gotta get big neon sign, the G spot. I don't know, like I'm in here working, and especially in my baby enclosures, I look over, and as soon as I start working, there's 6 heads sticking straight up looking at me, trying to figure out what I'm doing. Yeah, is food coming? Like, they're super personable. So, like if you were to do like, you can even do a lot of cool stuff with a 20-gallon if you're smart with your space for a male. Males will climb a lot, so giving them that climbing opportunity, basking spot I think is incredibly important for these snakes. I don't offer basking spots for babies, but once they hit that kind of 6 month and I'm ready to move them into an enclosure I have like bin setups. Basically I take big bins and I drill holes in them and put a shit ton of ventilation, and they have a little bit of belly heat, but I switch them away from belly heat as soon as possible. I just think the overhead heat with them, UV, they utilize it a ton, like every day. So yeah, that was the longest way ever of answering your question. Don't go anything smaller than a 20 for a male, nothing smaller than a 30 for a female. Pairs, stick to your 40, 50 or bigger. If you want to put a pair of garter snakes in a 4x2x2, they will use it.
Do you think it's important to keep them communally, or does it not matter if they're communal or independent?
The more experience I get with them, the more my very strong opinion on the subject switches to a very base by base, like situation by situation. The more I work with them, the more I'm learning that these snakes are individuals, and whereas they have key characteristics of their species, and like for example, California red-sided garter snakes, which are the worst garter snakes, by the way. They are the worst pet garter snake ever. Not really, but like if you want a pet garter snake, do not fucking start with Infernalis unless you're okay with not touching that snake that much. Okay, if you're okay with that, go ahead. But so there are studies that have come out that are showing that these are social animals. They're not strictly solitary. They form bonds with litter mates. They make friends, quote unquote, are what these studies are showing. However, I have had individuals that seem to do better on their own. Maybe think about it like people. I think some of them are a little more open to interaction. I think some of them are a little more to themselves. So, like if you have a garter snake that's doing super well by itself, I think you're okay. If it's, showing you behaviors that they would in the wild, it's basking, it's maybe foraging, climbing, not just always hiding. If you want, add another to it after a quarantine period and make sure they're the same sex or at the very least the same species. See what happens. If something changes, I think it's worth mentioning that when you have these animals with each other, there tends to be a little bit of a hierarchy. So a lot of the times, maybe you have two females together. Sometimes one of your females will be 10 to maybe 30% larger. And it seems to almost not be food related, because I've noticed that even when I feed two animals the same amount, maybe they're not getting the same thermoregulation or something like that, but there seems to be a hierarchy. So just keep that stuff in mind. I do think most of the time they benefit from being in a social circle. I try to keep my males in at least trios. Sometimes I'll have up to 5 if the enclosure is large enough. Females, I'll keep 2 together. Females get a little tougher because when they get bigger, they get incredibly, they get food excited. They're excited to eat. They want to eat. And these snakes have like surprisingly large teeth, surprisingly large fangs, which we'll talk about too. Because if you guys did not know, garter snakes are a venomous snake. So, I guess we should probably talk about that, huh?
I was just going to say that classification was just made recently, right? That they're rear fang venomous?
I'm not exactly sure how recently, but probably within the last two decades to a decade. Yeah, probably. I would say probably 2 decades would be my guess. But again, that's a guess. That's a total guess. Yeah. So garter snakes are rear fanged venomous. Lots of nitrocenes are. Your Rhabdophis genus, which is your green includes your redneck keelback snakes over in Asia, which you guys may have seen. They're ones that produce poison from their neck. Those are a garter snake relative. They're a natricine, and they're venomous and poisonous. In my opinion, and there may very well be research about this, I just haven't looked into it. I'm guessing that the venomous nature of natricine snakes is probably a ancestral trait that predates their dispersal into North America. So I think they've always been like that since, whenever they first evolved it back in Asia. It's my belief that your Storaria, your Regina, your Nerodia are all venomous snakes. However, from what degree, I'm honestly not sure. I have noticed some huge ass fangs in my fucking water snake girls. So I was like, okay, well, you probably have a Duvernois gland as well. They're not venomous in your typical elapid or pit viper way where they've got these front either fixed or folding out fangs. They seem to have rear fanged fixed fangs. Sometimes even more than one. It could have two fangs, at least in large teeth. I believe they're grooved, but I cannot remember. I can't remember if
chew it into you.
Yeah, they massage that venom out. Now it's for your fish and your frogs and stuff like that, so it doesn't really have an effect. Actually, Robert, I'm pretty sure Rob, our old buddy from the reptile store, is allergic to the venom, and his hand would just swell up because he had Infernalis. I heard rumors that there's been one confirmed death from a garter snake bite. However, I cannot find any proof of this, so I'm going to mention it, but I'm going to tell you it's probably not true. Citation needed. But I've heard a rumor, so.
I heard if you react to bee stings, you're going to react to like hognose venom or garter venom.
Wouldn't surprise me. Yeah.
I don't know if there's like a correlation to the proteins in the venom.
Well, I know that I'm not sure what I'm assuming garter snakes also have neurotoxic venom because that's what Thamnophis has.
Yep.
I don't know if bees have neurotoxic venom. I have no idea. But if it could be a neurotoxic thing. Maybe it's a sensitivity to neurotoxins. Maybe the proteins are similar. I'm sure there's a correlation of some kind. I'm just not sure exactly what it is. But there's some badass photos of their. I mean, how many times do you hear that garter snakes don't have teeth?
All the time.
When I use garter snakes for educational programs, which I try to do every educational program I run, when I ask people how many, do garter snakes have teeth, most people are telling me no, they don't. Well, they have teeth and they have fangs and they deliver venom. Like, that's one of the things that I try to tell people when I'm showing garter snakes off. These are not some garbage snake in your backyard that are just your run-of-the-mill snake. They're fucking weird. They are incredibly. They have keeled scales, like pretty heavily keeled scales. They're ovoviviparous. Okay, like that's weird. They're rear fang venomous. A lot of them specialize in hunting fish and amphibians. They're poisonous. Like a lot of these, like your Santa Cruz garter snakes are fucking poisonous. They eat the California newts, which, if I'm not mistaken, I'm no newt expert. I'm pretty sure they're one of the most toxic vertebrates in the world. They eat those. They store the toxins within I believe it's their muscle fibers. And I may before have seen them also produce the toxin from the neck, like the Rhabdophis, but I cannot remember. It was a long time ago. I can't remember if that was a different keelback snake or if it was a Thamnophis. I'm pretty sure it was Thamnophis atritus, the Santa Cruz garter snake, but citation needed. Like, they're so unique for what they are that it's amazing to me how underrepresented they are, not only just as an interest in snakes, but in captivity, because nobody knows a goddamn thing about them, despite them being everywhere. And I mean, they're awesome. They really are cool. They're intelligent, personable snakes that are. They make a better display snake than 90% of the snakes we're keeping. So, just in the fact that they're active.
I was just gonna say, like, in my time starting in the reptile hobby up till now, the uptick on people keeping colubrids and garters and everything like that instead of like boidae and pythonidae is just it's changing, and it's nice to see.
Yeah.
Like I want to say like 10 years ago, the Mexi Black king snakes, I couldn't give them away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'd produce them, nobody would want them. And I think recently they were just selling for $400.
Yeah.
So it's nice to see that that change.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Colubrids are getting more popular for sure. And garter snakes are weird because when I first got into garter snakes, nobody was into them. And that wasn't even that. I'm not an old guy. That wasn't long ago. There was a couple people. Like I'm over exaggerating a little bit, but especially in Canada, like they were not a big interest. I sold babies for $50, like of checkered garter snakes, Thamnophis marcianus. And again, like it would take me 3 months to sell, 10 babies because they weren't sought after. And most of those sales were to friends. And then by the time I had, at the height of my collection, I was working with California red-sided garters, Eastern garters, Santa Cruz garters, Oregon red-spotted garters. There's got to be more in there. That doesn't seem like all of them. But I was working with a bunch of species, at least half a dozen species / subspecies. And but by the time I was at that point, I mean, I bought the house I live in now. I bought with garter snake money. Like
Damn.
They were selling like a shit ton. And then I moved, and I noticed the interest for garter snakes kind of went back down a little bit. I had a harder time selling, but the prices stayed up.
Mm-hmm.
Prices were high for garter snakes around Ontario at the very least. And what I found recently is the interest of Nerodia has shot up significantly in the last 2 years. Very recent. There is a couple guys bringing them in over in, I'm pretty sure, Alberta. They're bringing them in, and people seem to be interested in them. All of my Nerodia I have in my collection now are from somebody else who decided to get rid of them. So people have them. I didn't back when I was doing garter snakes really heavy. But they're both really cool. I have a bigger collection of water snakes than I do garter snakes now, but that'll change for sure. But they're man, I could talk about garter snakes I could do an entire podcast about garter snakes. Like, fuck the other things. I don't care about talking about no ball pythons. I don't care about talking about fucking rat snakes or nothing, which is, I'm joking. I do care. I would love to talk about that stuff. But I could do a whole podcast on garter snakes just because there's enough with that genus to talk about in general that I think it would stay interesting. Like, seriously. And then that's not even getting into all the color mutations that are out there now for garter snakes. There's everything from albinos to melanistics to scaleless. There's scaleless garter snakes now. I think there's one guy working with scaleless Easterns, and then a couple other species. I think Radix had scaleless for a while, but I don't think they're around anymore. But go ahead.
How do you feel about scaleless?
I'm actually glad you asked that. My opinion on it has changed significantly in the last 5 to 10 years, probably 5 years.
So let me preface that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is scaleless naturally occurring? That yes. I'm going to start with that. It's naturally occurring? Okay.
In the way that most of the scaleless genes, the first animal was wild.
Okay.
So the first eastern garter snake was a wild-caught animal, a scaleless one, and it wasn't even a juvenile, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure it was a subadult. The first, because scaleless corn snakes are they're a hybrid, I think. I don't think they're pure corn. I'm pretty sure they're yellow rat snake hybrids, because I think, and I could be wrong, I'm not a yellow rat snake expert. I'm pretty sure that gene, or maybe it was the Texas rat. It might have been the Texas rat.
Yellow rat's the Everglades, right?
I'm not sure. Perhaps. I don't know if they're the same, if that's the same subspecies or species or not. Maybe. Say probably at the very least subspecies. I'm pretty sure it was a scaleless Texas rat has been bred into corn snakes to get scaleless corn snakes. I don't know about the scaleless false water cobras, where they originated. I don't know where the scaleless ball pythons originated, if that was captive or not. I don't know where the scaleless Burmese, or is it rock python, came from. And then there's some western diamondbacks and stuff like that that have also had scaleless in them. Now, my answer to your question, how do I feel about it? It depends. If you were to ask me 5 years ago, I would tell you I want nothing to do with it. It's unnatural, this and that. However, I think it is incredibly species dependent and on how that animal handles having that mutation. So, for example, scaleless ball pythons are known to do incredibly poor. I think they're all dead. I'm not sure, but I know that they do not do well. I remember seeing the the scaleless berm or rock. Can't remember which it was. And it was hard to look at. It had cracked skin. It looked like it had fucking, what's that called? It had like eczema.
Yeah.
Like it was awful.
If you have one of those, you need a big bottle of Lubriderm and a tube sock, and not for a fun reason.
And send me the video of you jerking that snake off with Lubriderm, because I'd like to see it. But from my understanding, corn snakes, Texas rats do not have these problems. They have no issues with shedding, maybe up their humidity a bit. The eastern garter snakes, I'm pretty sure there's one guy who has them. His look super well. They're healthy. They're fat. They're basking. They're utilizing UV. So that's why my opinion has changed. I think the scaleless false water cobras are gross. I don't like them very much. I don't like them. To be fair, I don't even like the lavender false water cobras.
I'm in love with lavender false water cobras.
You want to know what my problem is with lavender false water cobras? So, another topic, which we're not going to touch on too much today, but inbreeding in reptiles is incredibly common.
Huge.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of species handle it very well. I think a lot of species, even in the wild of snakes specifically, are more inbred than you and I think, especially when it comes to, reduced ranges and stuff. I don't even think just that. There are species that are known to not handle it well. Dry markin is a perfect example.
Mm-hmm.
When you inbreed indigos, crebos, you get these short, pudgy, spine-issued inbred snakes. They have problems. And keep in mind, I'm not saying that other species that handle it well do not have problems. Inbreeding is going to bring up problems. But from what I've heard from people, and I don't have any hands-on experience with lavender false water cobras, but from what I hear, a lot of those lavender false water cobras are incredibly intelligent snakes. From what I hear, those lavender false water cobras are dumb as a brick compared to the normal false water cobras, which is probably due to inbreeding. Because you got to think, all these lavenders, you get a lavender, you breed it, get a pair, it's always going to be siblings almost. Breed them together, get lavenders, breed them together, get lavenders, breed them together, get lavenders, right?
Yep.
I bet you the lavender bloodline of false water cobras is like, like it's not even a bottleneck. It's just a straight line down.
Just like Australian animals, straight line. Like there was one group brought in, and every Australian animal from Canada comes from that group.
Yeah. So I love the way the lavenders look, but just because if I'm gonna get a false water cobra, I want that uber intelligence that they're known for. I'd avoid the morph until people just got to make more hets, man.
Yeah.
Make more hets and breed them into stronger bloodline. Anyway, I'm okay with talking about false water cobras because they get compared to garter snakes all the time. Same with Drymarchon. Like indigos and crebos are always compared to garters. They're basically a big garter snake that smears shit all over the walls, right? And both of those snakes, because of that, are high on my list. I like intelligent colubrids. Yeah, super cool. But because of that, I would love to get one scaleless garter snake. I would love to have one. Just one. And I don't want it to have erythristic. I don't want it to be a flame. I don't want it to be golden because a lot of I don't know if you know about the golden gene in garter snakes. It was a gene that was around, and then when a certain individual lost his whole collection, the gene kind of went out, extinct, and it's back now. One of the rarest genes in garter snakes, and there's scaleless goldens. So
wow,
it's like a 1 in a million snake. Hold on here, I just gotta flip the switch quick. Okay. So yeah, my opinion on the scaleless has changed a lot. I don't mind it for most species. I think it has to go in a case by case basis for me, based on the individual species. For example, I mean they're not snakes, but bearded dragons, silkback bearded dragons should not exist. They have so many problems, whereas those problems are just not seen in scaleless rat snakes, and so far scaleless garter snakes. So I don't know if that has to do with their size, being a smaller snake, or what. It's interesting.
Yeah.
What do you think of that gene?
See, if it's naturally occurring and it doesn't negatively affect the snake's life, great.
Yeah.
Like I'm all for it, but you see them all crusted over like the ball pythons, and they're covered in stars, and it's like I don't feel like that's ethical. That's probably not the right thing to do.
No, those are gross. Same with any like neurological issue too, like your spiders and all that.
Yep.
Your jags for carpets. I don't think any of that shit should be perpetuated in the hobby. Not only does it make us look bad, it's just not fair, right?
No, and I think like a lot of that problem comes from like monetary value instead of like livelihood or longevity. Like the jungle jags, super common for carpets, beautiful snakes. Same with spiders. You can get really freaking cool looking spiders, but you get that wobble, and it's like, well, is it worth it to have an animal like that, or is that just produced because of monetary value?
Oh, I think it's definitely monetary.
Yeah.
I don't think it has anything to do with the love of the animals as individuals or just as a living fucking animal, right? I actually recently shared at the BC Reptile Club, who I have one of my close friends is I believe the social media manager and a couple other things. The BC Reptile Club recently had a huge list of like, these are not supported here. So like in their expos and stuff. And they did it pretty much how I just explained it, with a case by case thing. No spiders, no jags, the leopard gecko morphs that fucked them up, the super lily whites and crested geckos, a couple other examples. I think there's a fat tail gecko example in there. But they didn't put like scaleless snakes are not allowed. I can't remember if they put scaleless ball pythons, but they specifically, and I was talking to her about it, and she was like, yeah, it's a case by case basis. Like scaleless rats are good. They're okay. We can have them, but we're not going to have like, I'm sure scaleless false, well, I don't know if scaleless false water cobras have issues, but like a scaleless ball python, for example, I'm sure they would be like, what the fuck is this? I don't even know if there are any alive anymore. Like, that's how bad they did. So I think they've been in the hobby twice, and both times they were like, I'm not even supposed to be alive.
Yeah.
So, but scale scar snakes ain't on that list. To be fair, there's none in captivity in Canada yet. I'd like to bring some in.
They all in Europe?
Maybe I'll get lucky. No, they're in the States.
Oh, U.S.
Yeah, they're in the U.S. So, yeah, dude, let's talk more about garter snakes. I'm not done yet.
What's your favorite locality?
Well, there's some good contenders out there for garter snake localities. I don't know if it's a locality or if it's line breeding, but Tim Spuckler in the States, Third Eye Herps, or Third Eye Herpetoculture. I can't remember the
Shout out
name.
Tim.
Anyway, yeah, he rocks. His stuff is awesome. He has greenhead Santa Cruz garter snakes.
Damn.
And I love those things. I really, really love those things. Now, there's a couple other cool examples. Apalachicola eastern garter snakes are on there. They're a pretty cool looking garter snake. Maybe even its own subspecies. People aren't too sure. Because apparently they're like eastern garter snakes, but they're not. Like, they're weird. I think they're a pain in the ass to breed or get eating when they're born or something like that. So, but, I mean, maybe you were leading into this. Maybe you weren't. I have my own locality I started producing, which is also one of my favorites, the Cochrane District Flames, which are basically just your Quebec flames, but better. Maybe I'm biased. But they're a locality of flames, very, very similar, probably closely related to the Quebec flames, which I collected the first. I have all CB right now. I don't have any wild-caught animals. I have 2 bloodlines. And the plan is to get those out into the hobby in the next generation or 2. I'll put some pictures up for sure of them because they're very clean looking. They essentially look like line-bred flames without being line-bred. And a lot of your Quebec and Montreal flames will have not a lot of orange on the face. These things' faces are completely orange. They're really nice. Super nice. So yeah, those green heads in my flames are probably my 2 favorite localities.
I was watching the podcast today, and they said the Sertalis infernalis are basically just the supermodels. Like,
Yeah.
they look amazing, but you can't touch them.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
just because of that, I gotta go with them.
Yeah, and honestly, like they're I feel bad saying this. They're one of my least favorites, but like it's not because I don't like the way they look. I think they're awesome. It's just they're such divas.
Yeah.
And so the podcast you're talking about is Clubroid Radio, CCR, which if you haven't listened to, you gotta check that podcast out. And they have a garter snake episode with Amy. I think it's Amy Zirkle. Awesome episode. I've watched that as well. And yeah, it's a perfect example of, it's a perfect way to describe them. They're beautiful, but man, are they like, they're not high maintenance, but they're like, yeah, I'm beautiful, but you can't touch me. They're like, if you haven't seen these, I don't know how, go find some unedited pictures of them. Good luck. They're essentially a bright cherry, like, I don't know about cherry, but a bright red animal with blue stripes. And blue patterning on them, blue bellies. Man, they're crazy. And I had a pair. I was never successful in breeding them. My female passed away this year of cancer, and my male ended up going to Reptiliotis, Dion. He had my male. And so, yeah, it's a species I'll get back into for sure. I do like them, but I'd prefer getting like Sertalis, like Easterns, or my Atritus. I really have a soft spot for Atritus. I was talking earlier about how there's like the Atritus is the garter snake that's eating those California newts, and in the wild they're poisonous and venomous. So they have like, and there's actually a couple really cool papers and studies out there that are worth checking out. There's this evolutionary arms race going on between the two, where as these newts are being predated upon, they're getting more poisonous, and so they're getting more toxic. They're already one of the most toxic vertebrates in the world, and the garter snakes are getting more resilient to the toxin. So they're just racing each other, and it's super cool, super cool. But if anybody ever asks you if, are snakes poisonous? And like, oh, there's no poisonous snakes. It's not true. There are poisonous snakes. Actually, quite a few of them.
And they're kind of like frogs. They just secrete that fluid from the gland in their neck.
Yeah.
I think I watched a video of one getting predated on, and it's just like turning its neck towards the predator.
Yeah. They're asking to be bitten.
Yep.
It's like, crazy. That was Rhabdophis. The redneck keelback. That video is from either Christopher Shannon or David. I forget his last name, but one of those guys, I think it was David, took that video. And man, that's one of those like hot snakes that I would definitely keep. I would totally keep Rhabdophis. They're so cool, and they're garter snake relative. The more of those I can get, the better. But man, that video is awesome. I think I shared that in my garter snake group. Which, by the way, if you guys are interested in garter snakes, join the Facebook group. I run one called Garter Snakes, Water Snakes, and Other Natricinae, Thamnophis, Nerodia, Natrix. It's the biggest all-encompassing natricine group on Facebook. It's not the biggest garter snake group, but check it out. We got some really cool posts in there. I wish there was more Nerodia and Natrix posted in there, but sometimes I'll share some Rhabdophis, Natrix. And there's way more, too, than just the ones that I've been talking about. Like, there's a ton of natricines around the world. They're a very, very successful subfamily of snakes. And a lot of them don't make great captive pets. Crayfish snakes are a great example of that. Close relative of water snakes. You go find, start a crayfish farm and go crazy, I guess. I don't have the time for it. But, so... You were saying you've only had a melanistic Eastern before? Nice. I had melanistic Easterns too. They were awesome. And that's a good example of you can get anything in garter snakes. Like any color you want in a snake, you can find it in garter snakes.
Well, it's a good alternative for somebody who doesn't want to pay $400 for Mexi Black, King Snake.
Yeah.
Get an Eastern Mel.
Yeah, you can even find them these days in Canada, at least. There's not a lot of them left or around. There never was to begin with, really, but they're around. There's a lot of them in the wild in certain places, which I'm not going to say where, but
nope. It's like giving away a fishing spot. You can't do it.
Yeah, they're very, very, very common in the wild in certain places. That's all I'll say about that. Same thing with albino. Like, there's a couple places in Ontario where there's a shit ton of albino garter snakes. And that's where Anthony and I were working on a line of albinos together, and it just never went anywhere. I got out of the hobby. I think he ended up moving for a little bit, so it never went anywhere. But I like the albinos that come from Ontario.
I remember back in the day when you worked at the shop, and I was looking for something a little bit quicker. I ended up getting an Everglades rat snake off of you.
I remember that animal too, because you sent me pictures of it when it colored up.
Yep. But I remember at the time I was looking for that animal that you showed me, your albino checker garter snakes, and I was like, God, this is a beautiful animal. It's just so small. I was like, I don't have anything that can hold this without it getting out.
Yeah. Man, that Everglades rat snake, I think it was an asshole when I had it.
Oh yeah, never changed.
That's awesome. We had 2 albino Korean rats at the store for a year and a half, 2 years, and they were like that too, where they turned me against Korean rats for like ever because they were just. I was like, oh, these things' attitude sucks. But then I see things like the Japanese rat snakes. So those are cool. Japanese rats are cool, big time. Are you gonna get more garter snakes or what, man?
I think eventually. Okay. I have some fun things coming in the future.
Nice.
I just recently posted half of my collection up for sale because there's some pretty cool things today.
Okay.
but there's pretty interesting things coming down the pipeline. So that's
Nice.
to be determined.
Sweet.
Yeah.
I would say the same thing, except it's all garter snakes and water snakes and matrix. And other like niche shit that I want, like Cuban nitinols. Like
that, I think that's the thing though. You got to find what you love, right?
yeah, for sure. And you know what, too? It's like, it's nice too. I'm not the only person working with these snakes, but in a way, it feels like I am. Like it's my own sandbox. I don't have anybody playing in it with me, which is lonely sometimes. But it's also nice to be able to. I don't know. It boggles my mind working with all these garter snakes and water snakes and how unique all of their personalities are. And then it's like I said, it's just me doing it. Like there's not a lot of us. There's a couple guys, a couple people, but not as many as you'd think.
I think that's going to start changing though. I think a lot of people are going to jump into it.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it'll boom. I thought it did boom and then it died down again, which really surprised me. But also, like, there is not a lot of information out there. There is, if you know where to find it, but in general, there's not a lot of information. YouTube is a huge pusher for what species are going to be common and popular. And nobody makes garter snake YouTube videos really. And the ones that do all suck. Like they're not good.
Yeah,
and I'm okay saying that.
Discovery for kids, right? Like you're not getting to the meat and potatoes of it.
Yeah. And it is what it is. But I've been thinking about making some content on them. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. I guess this is technically that. But,
I was gonna say that's the beauty of doing what we're doing. Once we reach out and get some guests on here and get some extra thoughts on the matter, I think that's going to be huge. I think it'll be pretty good for people wanting to learn.
I hope so. I'm going to I'll talk a little bit about how I keep my garter snakes and how I am working with them. Anyway. All right. You want me to tell you about how I keep garter snakes?
Yes. Do it.
Okay.
So I heard a common thing is they get blisters.
Yeah. So I think we talked a little bit about that last episode. A couple common issues with garter snakes. Parasites are huge because everybody feeds them things they shouldn't. Do whatever you want. It's your animal. I no longer feed earthworms. I only will feed earthworms if I have to get pain in the ass babies to start, especially eastern garters, because the earthworms are like crack, the eastern garters. It's the easiest way to get them eating, aside from maybe tadpoles. And maybe it's an unjustifiable fear. I stay away from live fish. I stay away from tadpoles. I stay away from live frogs. I'm way too scared of nematodes and other parasites. They do get them. I've had captive bred and born and wild caught natricines come in where I've had to deal with parasites, and it's a fucking nightmare. It's not that bad once you get used to it, but I'd rather not deal with it. So I've stopped feeding those kinds of things. There are ways that I haven't experimented with, so I can't speak to how foolproof they are, but I know some people have gotten colonies of fish going where they treat the parents for parasites, and then they'll feed off the offspring of those parents, because once they're treated, you're not supposed to feed them. So people bring in tadpoles from the wild, which I would never do. That would scare the shit out of me. Breed your own tadpoles, sure. I don't see why that wouldn't work. I know one guy who uses axolotls. I just recently found out. I won't give his name away, but he uses axolotls for troubled babies, which is kind of like, okay, sure, I guess that works. At the end of the day, it depends for babies on species, how difficult they're going to be to get going. Checkered garters, eastern garters are pretty easy. Like Chapala garters, the ones you're commonly going to find are generally pretty easy to get going. There's a few like blackneck garters that can be a pain in the ass. Thamnophis radix, much more popular in the States than they are in Canada. Very easy to get going. My babies, I set them up in it's like a 5 to 7 gallon, it's like a storage tote, and it has a gasket on top. And what I do is, now for the record, I don't keep any of my adult Natracines in tubs of any kind or racks, nothing like that. I think racks are incredibly bad for them, for these snakes, specifically Natracines. But there are ways to do tubs properly. I just don't use them. I would, especially for quarantine setups and stuff. I just don't have any right now. But my babies are set up in little, I guess you could call them tubs, and I drill 4 3-inch holes, and I put just washer drains with the grid into those things, and that's how I do my air for that. My what are those things called? Fuck, how am I forgetting that word? I hear it again.
I think I heard it that time too.
Anyway, I'll figure it out later. So that's how I keep my babies. I keep them on paper towel to start. This way I make sure everybody's going good, and then I'll usually switch them to aspen. I've been experimenting with substrates with garter snakes and water snakes for like 10 years now, and I have yet to find something I really like. Any substrate on its own sucks for one way or another. I hate aspen, and I mostly use aspen. It's just the easiest and like the cleanest that I've found so far. I'm going to experiment with some higher cypress mulch percentages mixed in with soils and stuff like that. In 2026 is my plan, because I'm going to do some live planted enclosures, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But yeah, if you want to be basic, aspen's fine. You can use aspen. Just watch your humidity. If you're anything like me, in the winter it gets super dry, so you can have some shedding issues, because that aspen's just going to suck all the moisture right out of the air. So substrate is kind of do your thing. I'll switch it up for different species. I don't like using newspaper. I don't like using paper towels, except for babies. For any adult, I'll always use a substrate personally. Now, what some people are surprised, especially if you're new to these types of snakes, is that I don't, in my current setups, which I'll talk about, use a lot of water. They have big enough water dishes to soak in, and that's it. And a lot of that is because of the whole blistered issue that these snakes can get, as well as, I haven't had a lot of issues with scale rot with them, but if you keep their habitat too moist, you will. But you'll also encounter a lot of blistering with Natracines if your conditions are kept not only dirty but too wet. And I mean, the way to do that is to keep them dry, or to fight that is to keep them dry. Offer them a big water dish. Super easy way to keep them. Basking light. I always offer a basking light. A lot of people offer around 85 degrees. 85 is good. It's fine. I like to keep mine hotter, 90, sometimes even 95. For some of my southern species, I've had a lot of success with it. UV, I offer UV on the basking side only. That way they can get away from it fairly easily. Something low, nothing crazy, something low. They are avid sun lovers, so I do believe it is beneficial to offer it for them. However, I've had garter snakes live into their teens, almost their 20s, without any UVB. The oldest garter snake I ever worked with personally was one from a zoo that I worked at. It was a checkered garter snake. It was 22 by the time I left. So they can get old. They can get old. 10 to 15 is the average, but 15 plus is not unheard of.
Now, speaking about using UVB, do you notice it has a positive impact?
I notice mostly in coloration. It does seem to have a positive impact. It seems to increase the frequency of basking as well. So they seem to seek it out. So overall, I'd say, yeah, it seems to benefit them, not only just in an enrichment way, but I'm sure their health too. They're active during their diurnal, right? So they're active and basking when there's lots of sun. So if you were trying to decide yes or no, I'd say you offer it for sure. But I've got plenty that don't have any right now, and they do fine. But eventually, the plan is to have all of them set up with some.
I think as of recently, I've been like leaning more towards using UVB with a lot more of my animals, just because not like I feel like the color enhancement is because of something positive that's going on with their system.
Yeah.
So, and also I like seeing the color, so it's a little bit selfish, but also like I feel like there's a benefit.
I think there's definitely a good and a bad way to use it. I think you can overdo it.
Definitely.
You know, and certain UVB products are no good. Check out a reptile lighting group for that. Don't rely on me to tell you. I'm not a UVB expert. I just know what I use works. So.
Par ratings are hard.
Yeah. I'm not an expert on reptile lighting. It's something I need to research more. It scares me. It scares me getting into those different reptile lighting niches and stuff, and learning how to best light your habitats. But I'm sure it's not too bad. But, aside from that, I am experimenting. I've always experimented with these snakes. For me, they've been the perfect animals to experiment different husbandry things with, whether it be prey items, enrichment. The thing I'm experimenting with, which I mentioned last episode, is with water features in habitats. Lots of breeders, lots of people who like garter snakes will tell you do not keep water features with garter snakes and water snakes. It's too much of a risk, and it can cause issues with your snake. And I agree with those people. I think that 90% or not 90% of the time, but a lot of the ways people do it fails for one reason or another. But I do think I've come up with a way to do it properly where it'll work. Because even these snakes that don't have water features, they would benefit from having one. Behaviorally, instinctually, a lot of them, not all, seek out water, are semi-aquatic. Okay. My Infernalis almost never touched their water, never sat in it. My checkereds, for the most part, were kind of the same, didn't touch it too much, but I have a pastel checkered. She never gets out of it. She loves it. My water snakes all use it. Some of them use it during the day. Some of them use it only at night. Okay, my Rhombifer only soak in the night. My Fasciata pictiventris soaks during the day. So anyway, I'm now experimenting with water features where I have custom-built wooden enclosures, and I'm basically building a mini aquarium that goes snugly on one side of the enclosure, and that's their water feature. They're going to be filtered with sponge filters, and they're going to be set up with with live plants. And I'm also right now coming up with a way to increase circulation. So I don't know if I'm going to put a fan in every enclosure or if I'm going to circulate the room better. I haven't decided. I see the benefits of both. I'd like to put fans in every enclosure. It kind of just sounds like a wiring pain in the ass, but I haven't done a lot of research yet. I might just do a lot of ventilation in the enclosures and a lot of circulation in the room. I don't know. Like I said, it's an experiment. I think that paired with dry, clean substrate, clean water, frequent water changes, basking lights in order to help being dried off, I think is going to bring me success in keeping these animals semi-aquatic. Larger enclosures, no smaller than 50 gallons. 36 by 18 by 18 is what I'm working on right now. For my Rhombifer, I'm going to do 4 by 2 by 2 because they're a little bigger. I'll go species by species. So that's how I keep them. Any questions, Brennick? Anything you want to know before I move on?
Well, I was going to say it'd be interesting to see if you were able to put like your feeders into the water feature you're putting in there, and then watching their like natural hunting behavior.
Yeah, so it's actually funny you bring that up. One of the things I wanted to experiment with is more and more species are being found to do this behavior called lingual luring. If you know about how alligator snapping turtles hunt, you know what lingual luring is. Yep. They use their tongue as bait to lure fish, and then they'll attack the fish. Garter snakes have been seen to do this. Water snakes have been seen to do this. And my friend Jesse caught his natrix doing this. So this seems to be a ancestral behavior where they will stick their head under the water and move their tongue in a very peculiar way, and then they'll attack fish that go for their tongue. So I wanted to experiment with that, where I wanted to put kind of a viewing port in the aquarium section of the enclosure. That way, when they feed, I can watch and try to get them to do that behavior. I thought would be really neat. I've heard of garter snakes caudal luring as well, but I've never seen it. So I don't know how true it is, which is using the tail.
You know what? I've seen them flick their tail like crazy to pretend they're a rattlesnake.
Yep. Yeah, I've heard them rattle before. Absolutely.
So I don't think the tail lure is like so far to the question.
It wouldn't surprise me if it's not. It wouldn't surprise me too if certain species do it and not others. Because like I said, they're so widespread and diverse. You know, your wandering garter snakes are eating mostly rodents and birds and stuff like that, much more so than they're eating other things. Maybe still a lot of amphibians. But for your more, I mean, wandering garter snake would probably be if they're eating a lot of birds in maybe a specific locality, caudal luring would not be a bad thing to start doing, right? Yeah, it's interesting. It wouldn't surprise me if they were doing it, for sure. So the next topic I'll talk about is reproduction, is how breeding garter snakes kind of works. I'm not going to go super in depth with it. I'll just basically go a really quick, this is what I do, this is what I've had success with. And again, I am always experimenting with these snakes. I'm always finding something new to try. And it seems like, okay, well, it doesn't seem like. There is not a single way to do things for these animals. There are plenty of right ways and a couple wrong ways. And the wrong ways are only what's going to negatively impact the animal. Okay. But for your positive ways or your good ways to reproduce or keep these snakes, there's lots of ways to do it. My way is not the right way any more that this guy's way is the right way. Do your own thing, right? As long as it benefits the animal. Now, I've produced quite a few garter snake species, definitely most of the common ones you could find. Infernalis easterns, never Atritus, they're high on my list though. Lots of checkereds, lots and lots of checkereds. A couple others, I think. And breeding them, depending on the species and subspecies, is generally pretty straightforward. So your animals, if they're not power fed, are going to become sexually mature. Your females at year usually 3 or 4. Okay, this is what I aim for. 3 or 4 years old. Your males, they're ready to go by year 1 usually. Them, you don't really have to be as careful with size, but your females, you want them to be nice and big. I've always grown up my garter snakes really slow. Not super, super slow, but slower than most. And I've had old garter snakes, so it seems to help. It seems to do well for me. I've also had big garter snakes, so it doesn't seem to stunt them in any way either, within reason. Depending on what I feed my garter snakes adults anywhere between every 5 and 12 days. Sometimes I'll take a little longer break. Males I feed more often. Their metabolism seems to be a little higher. And females, again, some will take more food than others. So I do it by a case-by-case basis as well. I tend to not really keep a feeding schedule anymore. I kind of just feed animals, you know. So that seems to be how I've been doing it recently over the last 5 or so years, and it's been working out for me. My animals are lean but healthy and muscular, which is important to me. I don't like fat snakes. I don't like fat reptiles at all. So keep them from getting fat for sure. And if you're feeding these animals a high rodent diet very frequently, and especially within frequent intervals of feeding, your snake's going to get fat. And they'll get fat fast.
Obesity is one of the number one killers.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's not just for snakes either. That's for monitor lizards are well known. Tegus are always fat. I always see fat ass tegus.
Fat tegus, yeah.
Fat people love their fat tegus. And it
Savannah
negatively affects
monitors.
their health. Savannah monitors are, and an animal that rarely eats rodents in the wild, right? They're mostly insectivores.
Insectivores. Look at my friendly Savannah monitor, and it's just like a bowl of lard just
he's got
over
an
their arm.
85-degree hotspot, and he gets a mouse every other day. So,
can't lift his head. That's why he's friendly.
Yeah, exactly. My Savannah monitor was a fucking asshole, and she was lean, high walking everywhere. Yeah, she was cool. I liked her. I ended up giving her to a buddy when I moved up north. I'd like to get another monitor lizard again, but so that's how I generally feed my snakes. I feed quail. I feed rodents. I feed fish. If they're thymidase free, do your research. I'm not going to list off a bunch right now because I mean, honestly, if it's an easy fish for you to get, it probably has thymidase, so stay away from it. Check out
no
goldfish, no rosy red minnows. Okay. And avoid live fish from pet stores. You're going to get parasites. It's not maybe you will get parasites. It's just a matter of when. So avoid that. For emergencies, I have fed frozen thawed guppies before. I usually freeze them for about a month before I feed them, but I haven't had to do that in a long, long time. And I've never had to do it for garter snakes, only natrix. So I feed Sally's frozen silver sides quite heavily. I've heard that some people's snakes don't like them. Mine have all been really good on them. I've gotten a lot started on them. Feed tilapia. I feed salmon. I feed chicken heart, chicken gizzard, chicken liver. I feed no earthworms anymore. I used to. No longer feed any earthworms. Again, it's a parasite risk. You're going to get parasites. It's not a matter of when, and even if you can't see them, they're there. Occasionally eggs, day-old quails, which I think I already mentioned. I'm sure there's a lot I'm missing. Eggs, I said. I've never had any interested in snails, but I have tried the canned snails before. I've just never had any go for them. But yeah, that's generally speaking what I kind of rotate in it. Oh, and frog legs. I feed frog legs. I like frog legs. They're not a whole prey. You want to stick more to your whole prey sources, which is when I'll feed a lot of hairless rodents, or not a lot of hairless rodents, but a couple times a month, of varying ages. And I'll feed a lot of the silver sides because they're a whole prey item. Where I'm at, it's very hard to get whole fish that are bigger than silver sides. I wish I could, but I've thought about breeding platies or something. I'm just scared of parasites, even if I treat the parents. I got to do more research into it. I've also heard of people breeding frogs, feeding off frogs. Again, I'm scared of parasites, so I don't do that. And so that's generally what I feed. My feeding schedule, like I said, it varies. If I feed something that's heavy in calories and fat, I'll maybe give it a week or sometimes even 2. Sometimes I'm fattening a girl up to get her ready for breeding. And then it's very case by case. And then is the actual breeding. So you want to produce garter snakes. Your best bet, and for some you don't have to, honestly for anything you don't have to, but it is beneficial to brewmate your snakes. Depending on species, I will brewmate anywhere from 3 months to 6 months, which is a long ass brewmation. I don't know of anybody that brewmates as long as I do. I'm sure there's people out there that do. But again, I operate on a very case by case basis. My only animals that are brewmating for 6 months are my northern locality eastern garter snakes. Okay. I have long winters up here. I have my garter snakes where I live are active for 4, maybe 5 months out of the year. Maybe. They're not active for very long. So I try to replicate that. You will find better fertility rates in your snakes. Honestly, any snake probably like that you brewmate. If you brewmate them, it's especially important for your northern species. A lot of your checkers and your chapalas will just breed. Even your easterns will just breed. Like, not broodmating them is not going to stop them from breeding, but it can trigger ovulation. It can trigger the males to have a better sperm count, or at least healthier sperm, and it does help with your fertility rates. They can double clutch sometimes, double litter. If you double litter, please brumate. It's hard on their system, and that brumation seems to be a good reset for them. I don't double litter. I try not to. I've never had a double litter. I've never tried to have one. Your litter sizes, depending on your species. My smallest litter size I've ever had of any snake was my Nerodia fasciata. She had one baby. Yeah, it was also my first ever litter of water snakes. My smallest litter of garter snakes was 2 babies. My biggest was 60. It was a huge litter of eastern garter snakes. That was this year.
That is a huge litter.
60 babies. And the bigger your litter, the smaller your babies, and the more of a fucking pain in the ass they're going to be to get started. So you, like, 14 to 20 is my sweet spot. That's where I'm aiming. That's where things are good. 20 is a good size where the babies are fat enough to be like, yeah, I'll eat. But garter snakes are kind of a quantity over quality when it comes to reproduction, which is kind of not even true. I had this year, I produced 80 babies, not including stillborns. I had a 100% success rate this year. Everybody was well started, including of the tiny babies. So not too bad. You do get failures to thrive. Now, one thing I want to mention about that is it's all part of breeding. Happens no matter what you breed. Stillborns can happen because of a lot of things. Sometimes a first-year female, for her first time breeding, she's inexperienced. You got to remember, she's doing all the incubating herself, all the temperatures herself, right? Damn, what was I going to say? A couple things you want to do when you're breeding them. Your females, generally, I find, take about 80 days. Again, it varies. You can get them early or you can get them later. I've heard of like 113 days before of incubation, internal incubation. When you notice your female may be getting ready, you can't really rely on a pre-birth shed. Sometimes you can. Use it as a sign, but don't rely on it. A lot of the times the female will go off food. Mine didn't this year. Like, they're very like hit or miss with these kinds of things. And sometimes your females will get restless when they're getting ready to have babies. If you notice that, reduce your temperatures, turn your lights off. Okay? A hot enclosure is going to cause a larger mortality rate when it comes to these snakes giving birth. The belief for that is they seem to run out of oxygen faster or use up their oxygen faster. Not sure if it's a higher metabolism or what, being warmer. They seem to have less of a grace period when it comes to extra heat. Also, leave her alone. Leave your gravid females alone if you can, especially if they're not very friendly. Stress can cause some mortality as well. So, yeah, they're not too bad. When you brumate them, any southern species, I brumate at about 50 degrees. I'm experimenting with 58 degrees for Nerodia right now. And for northern species, I do anywhere from 40 to 45. It's pretty cold. It's pretty cold degrees. And that's in Fahrenheit. All my reptile temps, despite being Canadian, I do them in Fahrenheit.
I think that's just how it is with reptiles.
Most of us do. Yeah, I think most of us do it in Fahrenheit. Maybe not in Europe. I think Europe, they still do go by Celsius more. But I go by Fahrenheit for reptiles.
So with your garters, when the female is pregnant, does she have like the really fat portion at the back end? Like, is it very, very apparent?
Yeah, usually it is. You have like a ton of scale spread, especially a late term female. You look at her and you're gonna be like, holy shit, she's pregnant. You can usually tell.
Yeah, because I was gonna say with my boas, like when they're pregnant, it's like, yeah, you can see it.
I've had females not seem to show, especially big females won't show as much, but I've also had big females show, so that they're pregnant. you'll notice a lot of behavioral issues. Up the amount of food they're eating. You know, they're feeding for 40.
Yep.
So feed them good. Feed them a variety. Variety is good. So you finish brewmating your snakes, and now you're ready to pair. I just put the female in with the male. Usually, I find action happens immediately. He seems to be immediately interested. And she'll accept him or she won't. And you'll notice the poor guy is going to get dragged around a lot. Just let it happen. You may even notice some blood. You're all good. Don't worry about it. They bleed when they breed. Not all the time, but sometimes. The females will pull the male around sometimes violently, and she's much bigger than him. So it happens, right? Stuff gets torn up a little bit. Stuff gets scratched. I've never had a scratch on my penis, but I'm sure it would bleed a lot if I did. So I wouldn't drag it around all the time, all over the place, so it would get all dirty.
I'm trying to think of the band name, but their song is "I Ejaculate Fire," and that's what that reminded me of.
I know "I Come Blood" by Cannibal Corpse.
Cannibal Corpse, yes.
That's the one you're thinking about? "I Come Blood"?
Yep.
That's a good song, too. I almost saw Cannibal Corpse last year. This has nothing to do with anything we're talking about, but I almost did. But I didn't. They were my mom's favorite band when she was growing up.
Man, your mom's cool as fuck.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Cannibal Corpse, System of a Down, and Fear Factory.
Hell yeah.
Yeah,
that was the I was gonna say, is that the lineup from last year? But
I saw System of a Down, and Deftones, and two other bands, Wisp, and I can't remember the other band.
Sick.
It was awesome. It was a good show. My girlfriend Kayla got fucked up in that pit, though. I had to get her. I had to take her to the front to get medical to take her out. It was awesome. It was everything I could have.
No.
Well, I mean, first time System of a Down's been in Ontario and how long, and everybody's waited 4.5 hours for them to come out. That mosh pit was fucking crazy.
I moshed with Jesus at Kublai Khan.
Yeah. So anyway, now you have babies. Hopefully, if you did everything well, not if even if you do everything right, sometimes the first litter or second litter doesn't go well, and that's fine. It's not your fault. But let's say you have some babies. Stillborns and slugs are common. Don't worry. Okay, get rid of them, dispose of them, whatever. Babies, set them up. You're not going to wait for a first shed. Okay, they shed immediately after they leave their egg sac. They're born in a clear membrane. They cut their way out, and then they shed their skin immediately. It all happens within a couple minutes. Mistake people sometimes make. They assume they're like, I've never bred ball pythons, but from what I hear, ball pythons will have a first shed within a week or two. Don't wait for that. Your snakes will starve to death. You got to feed them. Some people will start feeding day 2 or day 3. I'm a little different where I wait 5 to 7 days before I start feeding. I find that this helps my ratio of babies that are going to eat on the first meal. And my first meal usually consists of chopped pinkies, chopped fish, and I will cut up a worm and I'll put the worm blood in it. I try not to feed worms too much. 99 times I have to for a couple of the babies, but I tend to have a good success rate with doing that mix. And I usually mix chicken hearts in pretty early as well. They seem to like chicken heart. So for the first few months of the life, I'll feed every other day. As a generalization, you can say for 6 months. For me, it's usually 3 or 4. Then I move to every 3 to 5 days. After the first year, every 5 to 7 days is what I feed. And again, it's usually always a mix. I'll feed pinkies pretty heavily when they're growing. And when I do that, it's usually, again, every 5 to 7 days. And that seems to be what I've had success with. But again, I'm always experimenting. I'm always changing stuff around. Certain individuals do better on certain foods. I've got an Eastern Garter right now from my Cochrane District locality. She was born in the end of July, and she still wants worms. Like, she still wants worms. she'll take other stuff, but not nearly as excitingly as she will take earthworms. I really got to try to get her to take other stuff. So I sent all of her food still. She'll grow out of it, but pain in my ass. Pain in my ass. I hate earthworms. Hate doing them. But that's kind of how I have how I'm doing my my garter snakes. I keep my babies a little cooler, not by much. They can handle the warm temperature, but you got to make sure they can get away from it, and you got to keep them hydrated. Those babies, they can dry out. That's your biggest concern with baby garters in general and water snakes is them dehydrating. So keep them hydrated. I bathe mine once a week. I give them a bath once a month. It'll be a like a mineral bath with that like electrolyte soak. I think it's Zoomed.
Okay.
I'll do that once a month with them, and it seems to help. Yeah.
Are they finicky to like get started drinking?
No, not really. But even with drinking, they're so small that their habitat can suck moisture out of them so fast. So just watch your humidity levels. They'll drink. I offer a pretty big water dish for them. I usually start with like one of the little ramekin dishes to start, and then once I move them to substrate, then I'll give them a decent size like Tupperware to use as a water dish. And they'll soak in it and party in it. Just make sure you change the water out very frequently because they go in it, they use it, they're messy.
I was just curious because I've heard of people with emeralds having a hard time getting them to drink.
I wonder if that's a similar thing where they get a lot of their. I bet they get a lot of their moisture from not only the things that they eat, but probably morning dew. I bet you they drink a lot of morning dew. So I bet you that's a lot to do too with, or I bet running water too. I've noticed if you include running water instead of stagnant water, your snakes will be more likely to drink.
Yep.
I've noticed that with corn snakes, ball pythons, garter snakes, any of them.
I always give the recommendation to get like one of those like 12-ounce deli cups and just like poke a bunch of holes in the bottom and make sort of a rain chamber.
Yeah.
Just because usually it's the running water that will get them going.
I just don't. I think instinctually they want to not drink stagnant water. It's dangerous, right?
Yep.
So I bet you any money it'd probably be something similar. I'm not an emerald tree boa expert, but I bet you habitat and probably a lack of running water plus like I said, habitat parameters. I bet if you keep them too dry, I bet you those things will dry out so fast.
Yep.
Same with like green tree pythons, Amazon tree boas, all that kind of thing. But that's kind of like my overview on garter snake care. Aside from that, like I've had garter snakes since I was probably 10 years old, maybe a little younger, and I've been herping for them longer than that. And they are rewarding. They're fun. They're beautiful snakes. You can get them in any color you want, pretty much. If you're like your morphs, there's some awesome garter snake morphs out there. There's kind of something in the genus Thamnophis for everybody, which is one of the reasons why I push them on people. I would be comfortable calling them the best beginner snake if it wasn't for their tiny, tiny size at birth and getting them started. That's their only downside I find.
Now, I heard this in the podcast too. Have you ever experienced like problem feeder babies and then you put in maybe one that was a little bit more mature that was like an avid eater and that kind of sparked the feeding response of the poorer eaters?
Yeah, there's lots of little tricks. Sometimes I'll do that. I'll introduce better eaters. I always keep my babies in a group. That helps for sure. Always helps. And sometimes I will also, this works a lot for my natrix. Garter snakes, it's hit or miss. I have had it work. Sometimes I'll put the individual in a deli cup with a little bit of water, not enough to cover the whole body, just a bit at the bottom. And I'll put all the food in the water, and then I'll just either put them in the dark or put them back in the enclosure with the siblings. And I found that could start getting them to eat. a lot of it is finding the food that baby prefers, which is like
Fair.
a pain in the ass, but
Yep.
that seems to be the way to do it. And it works. It works for me. There's lots of little tricks. One of my favorite tricks is basically punching a baby in the face with the food. Beating them up. You basically get them frustrated and they bite out of frustration and then they eat.
Yep.
And it works a lot of the time for me. There's a great method. Brett Dunn has an awesome video on. I can't remember if it's on his YouTube or Facebook. He does Garters Done Right. If you want garter snake morphs, that's kind of the guy you're going to these days. The tickle method, where you just take a little piece of food, and I do it about 1/3 down the body. You kind of tickle them with it, and a lot of the time, their instinct is to turn mouth open.
Yep.
Even a problem eater. A problem eater will be like this as well. And once they latch, that's it, they're eating. And I found that works for a lot of my troublesome babies. Not always, but they're all individuals. You got to find their own little quirks and tricks. And they can differ so much from each other, really. They really can. But,
Well, damn. Thank you for your knowledge, good sir.
yes, sir. Good snakes. And this is a topic, too, that as I was making notes, I was like, oh, we're going to revisit this.
Oh, 100%.
We ain't done with garter snakes even a fucking little bit. This is just like a general overview, my experience with them. And again, there's a very good chance I had some of my years and stuff wrong for the evolution portion. I'm not an expert on that topic. I research what I can, and I opened a bunch of papers. Maybe some of them have been disproven by now, but do your own research if you want to know more about that. TLDR, these snakes are awesome. They're successful, and they're worth keeping, and they're worth watching in the wild. Some awesome behaviors like that you can watch from these guys, and herping for them is fun. I still love finding them out in the wild. Road cruising for garter snakes is one of my favorite pastimes for sure.
I just showed my daughter a hot spot for garters this past summer.
Nice.
Yep.
What'd you think?
Blew her mind.
Yeah.
Blew her mind. Every garter on that hill is her snake. So
Nice.
Yeah.
We're supposed to be doing a road trip in April or May to the Narcisse snake dens in Manitoba. If you haven't heard of those, look them up. It's like one of the biggest congregations of snakes in the world, and it's all Thamnophis or Tallus peritalis, which is my second favorite species, subspecies of garter snake, next to Atritus. Those are my two favorite. Atritus being a species. But that's all I've got for today. So unless there's anything you want to add, Brennick, I will cut us out and get us out of here.
No, that was all. Next time we play with fire.
Next time we play with fire, and you're going to talk more for that one. And
Yes.
I'm going to shut up and sit back and probably just ask you questions.
Beauty.
But
Love it.
I'm not going to say what the topic is, but I do have things I kind of want to talk about too. So
Excellent.
I think that's going to be an exciting episode. But that's this was kind of my not shut up episode, and next ones is going to be Brennick's. So for anybody who made it this far, we're almost 2 hours in. I appreciate you. Thank you guys for watching. Let us know any topics you would like to hear. Feel free to check us out on social media. Creature Crossing is where I'm at mostly, or Braden Brookhouse on Facebook. I don't think Brennick still has a very high social media presence, but when he does, he will say, you can find me here. And aside from that, we're working on Patreon. So when that happens, I'm not sure when it will yet, check that out. And that's basically just going to mostly be to help us pay for the podcast, because it's not free to do, unfortunately. Aside from that, go catch a garter snake.
Do it.
You'll like it.
And if you can't buy one yourself, get your parents to buy one for Christmas.
Or do what I did and sneak them in the house.
Me too.
Okay. Bye-bye, guys.
See ya.
Okay, and
Thank you for tuning in to Creature Crossing. Please check the description for social media links, Patreon, and more. Feel free to subscribe and leave us a review. The song used for our intro and our outro is called The Snake Eater's Palace, Outer Heaven by Audio Mocha, Anime Vivi, and Endless Repeat, which we found at ocremix.org. Thanks again for listening.